8 months off the floor, fighting a flu that nobody was even talking about, benched to start 4 out of 5 games. And she still walked away as the youngest MVP in FIBA qualifying tournament history. Let that sink in for a second. Not the youngest on Team USA, not the youngest American. The youngest in the entire history of this tournament. Every country, every player, every coach who's ever been through one of these qualifying runs, she's now at the top of that list. At 22 years old, coming off a major injury layoff, coming off the bench. Now here's the part that I need you to actually stop and think about, because this is where the story gets genuinely strange. The player they kept off the opening tip in 4 games, she also led the entire Team USA roster in minutes played. Not the starters, not the veterans who were getting those opening tips. Her, the bench player. She played more than anyone else on the team. And it doesn't stop there. She led the team in assists. She led the team in plus-minus. She led the team in efficiency. But not just Team USA. Every team, every player, every single nation that showed up in Puerto Rico for this tournament, Caitlin Clark topped them all. And if you're someone sitting out there right now saying she's overhyped, saying this is a media creation, saying the numbers don't back up the narrative, I need you to stay right here because you are completely missing the point. And by the end of this video, you're going to see exactly why. Stay until the end and here's what you'll find out. First, the one tactical decision in the Spain game that exposed exactly why keeping Clark on the bench was hurting Team USA more than anyone wanted to admit publicly. Second, the specific statistic that completely changes how you read the entire coaching controversy around this tournament. And it is not the MVP award. It's something quieter and honestly, more damning. And third, why what Clark and Paige Bueckers built together in 5 games in Puerto Rico is about to become the single biggest problem in international women's basketball heading into Berlin 2026. That last one is bigger than this tournament, bigger than the MVP, bigger than any of the controversy. Stick around. We're going all the way through. Real quick, before we get into it, everything you're about to hear is based on publicly available information, verified reports, official FIBA data, and our own film and statistical breakdown. This channel is not affiliated with Caitlin Clark, the Indiana Fever, or the WNBA. And look, you already know the conversation around Clark runs deeper than basketball. You already know it touches things that are bigger than any one game or any one tournament. We're not here to push an agenda on any of that. We're here to look at what actually happened on the floor in Puerto Rico, what the numbers actually say, and what it means going forward. That's it. Let's go. All right, Game 5, last game of the tournament, Spain. On paper, this was supposed to be the easy one. Team USA had been rolling through this tournament. 4 wins, comfortable margins, the job basically done. Spain was the closer. The victory lap. But Spain came in with a plan. Their coaching staff had watched every single game. They had film on Team USA's starting unit. They knew the tendencies, they knew the spacing, they knew who initiated offense, and who was waiting for the ball to find them. And they built something specifically deliberately designed to exploit what they saw. Soft box and 1, mixed in with zone looks. Now, for people who don't live in the tactical weeds of basketball, let me break this down in plain language because this matters. A box and 1 is a hybrid defense. 4 players play zone. They're not chasing individuals, they're protecting areas of the floor, collapsing on drives, clogging the paint, making everything uncomfortable near the basket. The 5th player, she locks onto one specific opponent and follows her everywhere she goes. The goal is simple. Take away your best playmaker. Force everyone else to beat you. But Spain ran a soft version, and that's actually more disruptive, not less, and here's why. In a hard box and 1, the defense is obvious. Offenses can read it immediately and start making adjustments. In a soft version, the coverage shifts just enough to break rhythm without being predictable. The ball starts moving a half-second slower than it should. Spacing looks right, but feels wrong. The offense is operating in sand and doesn't quite know why. That is exactly what was happening to Team USA's starting unit. The ball wasn't moving, the pace was dragging, and Spain, led by two young players who absolutely deserve to be named here, was genuinely, legitimately hanging around. Family, 18 years old, already projected as a top WNBA draft pick, scoring in the paint against elite defenders like she'd been doing it for a decade. Ayanna Martin, 20 years old, distributing and defending at a level that had Team USA's veterans genuinely unsettled, not just holding their own, pushing. By the time the second quarter started, the score was tied. Against a Team USA squad that had been rolling through this entire tournament. Against a team with multiple WNBA All-Stars on the roster. Tied. And Caitlin Clark was watching it happen from the bench. Now I want you to sit with that image for a second, because this is the moment. This is the tension that the whole tournament had been building toward. Spain's defensive scheme was specifically designed to neutralize playmaking, and the best playmaker on the entire Team USA roster was sitting down while it worked. Then Clark checked in. And I mean this literally, the game changed immediately, not after a few possessions. Not once she got comfortable. Immediately. Here is the tactical reason, and this is the layer that most highlight packages skip right over. Clark didn't come in and just start shooting. She came in and did something more fundamentally damaging to Spain's defense. She pulled their coverage all the way out to half court. Think about what that means for a soft box-and-one. The entire structure of that defense is built around protecting the paint. The zone defenders are positioned to protect areas near the basket, to collapse on drives, to clog lanes, to make life miserable for anyone trying to get easy looks close to the rim. But when Clark is on the floor, a defender has to follow her out to logo range and beyond. Because if you don't follow her, she pulls up from 30 feet and makes you pay. And she's done it enough times that every defense in the world knows it's a real threat. The moment that defender leaves the zone structure to chase Clark out toward half court, the geometry of the entire defense collapses. Gaps open in the paint. Passing lanes that were clogged are suddenly free. The zone can't maintain its shape because one of its 5 pieces is now 35 feet from the basket, chasing someone who might shoot from anywhere. Spain had no answer for it. Not because they were unprepared, they knew it was coming. But there is no good answer when the threat is that credible from that far out. You either concede the open 3 or you break your own defense to prevent it. Neither option works. Every meaningful scoring run Team USA put together in that game happened with Clark on the floor. The final score was 84-70, but that number actually undersells how competitive this game was before Clark took over. Spain was good. Fam and Martin are real players with real futures in this sport. The fact that Clark came in and made a tight game look manageable, that's more impressive because the opponent was legitimate, not less. But here's the thing, the Spain game isn't the most uncomfortable part of this story. The most uncomfortable part is the full stat sheet from the entire tournament, because those numbers are going to be very difficult for anyone to explain away. Let's just put everything on the table. Across 5 games in Puerto Rico, Clark averaged 11.6 points per game. She dished out 6.4 assists per game, 32 total assists across the full tournament. She led Team USA in 2-point field goal percentage. She led Team USA in free throws made and free throws attempted. And that free throw number matters more than people are giving it credit for. Getting to the line consistently is not an accident. It means you're attacking, you're drawing contact, you're forcing defenses to make hard choices on every single possession. That is not a player sitting in a corner roll waiting for open catch-and-shoot threes. That is a player who is actively, aggressively hunting advantages every time she touches the ball. She played more minutes than anyone else on the entire Team USA roster. Anyone. And her plus-minus. She didn't just lead Team USA, she led the entire tournament. Every team, every player, every nation that competed in Puerto Rico. When Clark was on the floor, Team USA outscored opponents by a margin that nobody else in the whole field could touch. Her efficiency rating across all competing nations. Same story. Not the top of Team USA, the top of everyone. Now, hold those numbers in your head. Hold all of them. And now, add this fact sitting right next to them. She started 1 game out of 5. 1. The player who logged the most minutes on the roster watched the opening tip from the bench 4 times out of 5. These two facts are occupying the same space, and they do not make sense together. And I think anyone watching this tournament closely, anyone being honest with themselves, felt that tension building in real time. Now look, I want to be fair here because fair is how we operate on this channel. There are reasonable explanations a coaching staff might offer. Clark had been off the floor for 8 months, coming off a serious injury. Managing her minutes, easing her back, and being careful with her load, that makes sense from a health standpoint. Nobody wants to rush a player back from that kind of layoff and risk making things worse. There's also the reality of veteran dynamics in international programs. Starting spots in tournaments like this sometimes carry a meaning that goes beyond pure performance. They're a recognition of years of service, of loyalty to the program, of what players have given over a career. That's a real consideration in team building, and it's not nothing. And the outcomes of these games, Team USA won all 5. So if you're measuring purely by wins and losses, the approach delivered results. But here is the number that makes that argument very hard to sustain: 6.4 assists per game, coming off the bench, against organized international defenses specifically designed to take away the pass. That is not easy to do, at all. Guards playing in FIBA qualifying tournaments are facing defensive schemes built to deny entry passes, trap ball handlers in pick-and-roll coverage, and force offenses into half-court sets where the shot clock does the work for the defense. International coaches are sophisticated. They've done their homework. Averaging over 6 assists per game in that environment as a bench player getting into the game after the offense has already established itself, getting fewer early possessions than a starter that is not a role player running hot for a week. That is a floor general operating at a level that the rest of the roster simply was not matching. And then there's the plus-minus. The plus-minus doesn't care about narratives. It doesn't care about politics or rotation decisions or what the starting lineup looks like. It just tells you what the scoreboard did while a specific player was on the floor. And the scoreboard loved Clark. Every single time she was out there, Team USA was better, by a margin that no other player in the entire tournament could replicate. That's not coincidence. That's pattern. And patterns mean something. But here is what actually changed the feel of this whole tournament, and it's the piece I think matters most going forward. When Nate Tibbetts took over as acting head coach after Kara Lawson had to return home, something shifted on the floor almost immediately. And it wasn't subtle. Lawson's approach to Clark, and you could see this clearly on film, was essentially to use her off the ball. Keep the offense balanced, distribute the possessions, don't let any one player become the engine of the whole system. On paper, that sounds like smart, equitable roster management. On the floor, it looked like Team USA was deliberately putting the brakes on the fastest car in the garage. Tibbetts did something different. Guard-heavy lineups, faster tempo, and Clark initiating offense from the top of the key, not spotting up in the corner waiting for someone to find her, but actually running the show from the moment the ball crossed half court. The results were immediate. Look at the New Zealand game. That is where you could see most clearly what Tibbetts was building. Clark started that game the first time all tournament she was in the opening lineup. She played 23 minutes, the most on the entire team. With Bueckers alongside her and Kelsey Plum spacing the floor, Team USA did not just win. They suffocated New Zealand. It wasn't a game after the first quarter, it was a demonstration. The tactical reason that lineup was so hard to guard comes down to one thing: decision-making at speed with multiple threats. When you have 2 players who can both score and both pass, defenses have no right answer on any possession. If the defense collapses on Clark at the top of the key, Bueckers is getting a kick-out three. If the defense tries to follow Bueckers through a screen, Clark is already reading the rotation and finding the open cutter before the help defender can recover. There is no correct response because every adjustment you make solves one problem and immediately creates another somewhere else on the floor. Now there's one more subplot from this tournament that deserves an honest look because the easy version of this story glosses over it. Angel Reese. In the early games, when Tibbetts shifted the system toward faster, guard-heavy basketball, there was real friction around how Reese fit into what was being built. Reese is most dangerous in a half-court set where she can establish position in the post, use her size and muscle for looks near the basket. In a slower, more controlled offense, she's a genuine weapon. But in a fast guard-heavy system with the ball living primarily in Clark and Bueckers' hands, her usual kind of involvement wasn't there in the same way, and you could feel it in the early games. Here's what actually happened though, and this is the part worth paying attention to. Tibbetts found a version of Reese that worked within the new system, because Reese is one of the best rebounders in the game at any level. And in a fast offense, the best rebounder is the person who starts the break. She grabs the board outlets to Clark and sprints the floor as a rim runner. That is a real, important, valuable role in up-tempo basketball. It's not a lesser version of what she does, it's just a different application of her gifts. By the Spain game, the tension from the early tournament had settled into something functional. The system change didn't sideline Reese, it found her within a different framework. That matters because the version of Team USA that's heading to Berlin is not a one-player show. It's a system that has figured out how multiple weapons can coexist. And that brings us to what is honestly the most exciting part of this entire story. What Clark and Paige Bueckers built together in Puerto Rico. These two came into this tournament having barely played together in any meaningful context. Different teams, different systems, different roles for their entire careers up to this point. They were not a known quantity together. Nobody had real film on how they'd function as a unit. 1 week, 5 games, Puerto Rico. And by the Spain game, they were reading each other in real time in ways that typically take an entire season to develop. Clark would push the pace off a defensive rebound, and Bueckers already knew exactly where to position herself before Clark even looked up. Bueckers would come off a ball screen, and Clark was already loading the pass before Bueckers had fully cleared the defender. The communication was happening without words, without signals, just pure shared understanding of what the defense was giving and how to take it. That kind of chemistry is not something you can manufacture quickly. It's built through repetition, through learning each other's instincts, through being wrong together enough times that you stop being wrong. They compressed what should have taken months into days. The specific two-man action that was giving international defenses fits was their pick and roll. Clark, at the top of the key, initiating. The defense has to make a choice every single time. If they hedge hard on Clark to take away her pull-up, she reads it instantly and hits Bueckers on the short roll before the recovery defender can get there. If they go under the screen to take away the roll, Clark rejects. The screen entirely attacks downhill, and the defense is scrambling sideways while she's already in the paint making decisions. If they try to trap and take both options away, Clark turns the pressure into transition, and now it's a broken defense running back against a Team USA team that runs better than anyone wants to guard. Analysts covering this tournament called it unguardable, and watching the film, it is genuinely hard to find the flaw in that assessment. Now, here's what makes all of this matter beyond Puerto Rico, beyond the MVP, beyond the coaching controversy. This chemistry is going to Berlin with both of them. The 2026 World Cup. Both Clark and Bueckers will be there. And the foundation they built in 5 games, the pick and roll, reads the transition, triggers the trust in each other's decision-making under pressure. That foundation does not disappear when the tournament ends. It compounds. Every time they're on the floor together between now and Berlin, they're building on what they started in Puerto Rico. 8 months off the floor, 1 week of tournament basketball, And Clark came back and led the entire field in plus-minus and efficiency, built real two-man game chemistry with one of the best guards in the world, and proved that a fast guard-heavy system with her running the show is genuinely structurally difficult to contain at the international level. International defenses have a real problem coming. And here's what I want to say before we wrap up, because I think this part gets lost in all the noise around Clark. She came into this tournament carrying more than a basketball. 8 months of recovery. An injury that kept her off the floor through what should have been prime professional months. A flu that nobody outside the team bubble was even aware of. An environment where the tactical decisions weren't built around her strengths, at least not initially. And a spotlight so relentless that every game, every stat, every benching, every minute distribution decision was being dissected and argued about by millions of people in real time. That is not just athletic pressure. That is a different category of weight entirely. And here's what she did with all of it. She played. Not perfectly, not without friction, not in a system that was immediately optimized to maximize what she does best. She played. She adjusted. She found what she could control, her reads, her pace, her decision-making, and she operated at the highest possible level within whatever situation she was handed. The youngest MVP in the history of this tournament didn't happen because everything went right. It happened because she found a way to be the most impactful player in the building on 5 consecutive nights, even when things weren't going right. There's a blueprint in that. And it has nothing to do with basketball. You don't wait for the perfect conditions. You don't argue your way into the right role. You make the scoreboard say what it needs to say, and you let the data do the talking for you. Clark didn't answer her critics with words.